working in downtown LA actually.
Okay.
So my business was, industrial buildings. So that was my niche, just doing industrial buildings, warehouses, factories. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. But moved over. I know everybody says, "Oh, don't people usually start off in residential and then go off to commercial?" I love it in residential. I really love it, and it's been great. So
That's amazing. How did you fall into that commercial? Like, was it a job that you went into first, or did you actually like get licensed for commercial?
yeah, so I have an older cousin. I have several cousins, but two of my older cousins were already in the business for some time, and it was literally like a Christmas dinner that we were having together, and the more and more they were talking to me about what their work was like. And I come from a pretty heavy sales background. I mean, I started as an insurance agent when I was 18, before I went to college. I did go to college after, so I went to college a little bit later, but started off in sales at a pretty young age. So that always intrigued me, and it kind of said something that was interesting to me with real estate. And he talked a lot about what money really meant, and I still think about this to this day. And he says, "You know what, Richard? Money isn't everything, but time is everything, and money can buy you time." So I thought that was just really interesting. And we talk a lot about freedom, or freedom is earned and gaining freedom through the business. And that's really what I guess attracted me. My wife was pregnant at the time, and my son was just about to pop out, and I really wanted to be in a business where I could gain freedom.
Yeah, that's really cool. We were talking, what day was it? Was it yesterday? I can't remember, Philip, or the day before maybe. We were talking about money and how the relationship that people have with money, and how that plays into everything. And I was quoting Kanye saying, "Money isn't everything, but not having any is." And, and so I love what you said about that. So money can, it's not all about money, it's about time, but money can buy you the time and the freedom. And I think those are the really, I mean, those, we talk about the 3 F's of why people get into real estate, right? Finances, freedom, and flexibility. And it's an interesting thing because, most people, it falls in somewhere in there. Like it was the same for me. I was making great money before, but I didn't have any time or freedom. So I really was like, you can't pay me $1 million to, stay here where I'm at. Like, it doesn't matter. Right. But the thing is that then the finances, they really have to come first before you get any of the flexibility and freedom. Right. And I think that's where a lot of agents kind of, get it upside down when they're first getting going.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you went into commercial, and then how was that for you?
Commercial was great. It's definitely a tough business. Where we're not doing open houses. There are no Instagram posts. Hey, look, check out my 10,000 square foot warehouse. Like, there's nothing like that. It was literally like really in thirds, door knocking, and I'm talking door knocking businesses. So a lot of times you're not even talking to the decision makers, but a lot of door knocking, a lot of cold calling, and lastly was referrals, which really comes later. But I would say my first several months on the job was really cold calling through a phone book. So
Mhm.
this was back in 2011, and we don't have dialers like we would here in residential. Is literally getting the white pages with the ruler, and that's how what I did in insurance too. Just going through it. That's why I think cold calling. I really do see the value in that, of cold calling, because that's really what I did. And my first year, I mean, I think it was about half a year. I earned about $15,000, which to me was like, all right, that's not big money, but at the time I was like, all right, hey, this is something. It's okay. And really, that's every year from there on, it would just keep doubling and doubling.
Yeah.
And so and that was most of it was cold calling and door knocking. That's all it was. And it was a very, very tough business because even with your door knocking here in residential, a lot of times you're talking to the homeowner. But imagine you're door knocking and every time you're getting a renter, right? Or
Yeah.
you're not even getting a renter, you're getting a housekeeper, or you're
Yeah.
getting a 8-year-old that has no power in making a decision. That's really what it was like door knocking there. So it was like, I mean, literally showing up a lot of times early in the morning because you knew that the owner of the business would be there probably early when they would open. So getting there right when they open and just trying to hit them like early on or at different times, that was very interesting. That was tough.
That is a really good point. You know, there's something to be said for that, by the way. Just on a side note, the earliness of the business owners and stuff, I've noticed that that's when the big business owners are out and about doing, even back before I was in real estate, I used to sell cars. And I would get there, I'd be the first one there. You know, we open at 8:30, but all of a sudden I realized that if I would get there at 7, I would find all the big rich people wandering the car lot before the place even opened, like looking at the cars, and I was able to get my sales in because of that. So that's really interesting because that ties back into, you know, time, obviously, time and money. And it also ties back into cold calling. You know, when people sometimes, I think agents feel weird about calling really early, but you want to talk to people early, I think. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there was an agent that used to be in our office. This guy who was a top, like I would say, $30 million producer, and his former EA is our agent services, and she was just telling me the other day that he started his cold calling at 8 a.m.
Uh-huh.
8 a.m. to 1 p.m. was his like protected cold calling time. That's all he did, and that was his entire business was cold calling. He started at 8 a.m. and I thought, wow,
Yeah.
8 a.m. That's really interesting. I mean, I guess more people would pick up the phone because they're not expecting a call, a call like that at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But I'm still, I don't get to cold call as much as I used to, but I still feel very comfortable with it. It's still a pretty big part of my business, and my team with cold calls, we're using the dialer. We have FISBOs, expired lists, circle prospecting is what we do with our cold calling. So we're still pretty heavy on that.
Yeah. Well, yesterday, I was talking to Paul Morris and a couple of other of our leaders, and one of them was saying that, you know, the culture of cold calling is really not as intense here in California. I think, Philip, you were talking about that the other day too, where it's not necessarily as intense in our area as it is in like some other markets. Like, for example, Portland, Oregon, most of the businesses, the real estate businesses out that way were built on expired and for sale by owner calls. And that's how I started. And for me, they all started at 8 o'clock. And so when I got in, I realized that they all start 8 o'clock on a dot. They do script practice from 7:30 to 8 with their teams in the office. And then they would start calling right at 8 o'clock. So I finally said to my team leader, because I was on a team at the time, I said, listen, we got to do our script practice earlier. I want to hit the first 3 FISBOs that came on the market at 7:45, right before everyone else starts calling them right at 8 o'clock on a dot. And that worked. And it's not weird. And like, you would think that, you know, people are freaked out about that, but I think it also depends who you're calling, right? Because I mean, the FISBO is hoping for the phone call, so they don't care. They pick up the phone. Expired, a little different. Right? I mean,
I mean, expireds, I always say expireds are tough because usually a listing expires because the previous agent wasn't able to tell the client the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of someone's been hurt by an agent. They just feel like the agent, so they already have a negative connotation and just mindset around what agents are and what they can deliver. So that is definitely a little trickier, but I think FISBOs for sure. I mean, if you're not getting a call picked up from a FISBO and you're not able to have a conversation on the FISBO, either you're doing something wrong or they don't really want to sell. FISBOs are pretty open to talking to agents. They actually really are.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. So your team, talk to us about your team. Who do you have on your team at the moment, and how big are you?
Yeah, so our team is great. Right now we have we have 3 buyers agents primarily and 2 agents that handle listings and buyers. So 5 agents total, and I have a full-time executive assistant that runs our team. We have a lender that we partner with everything that's we really consider part of our team. And full disclosure, 2 out of those agents are really part-timers. But they're still doing pretty well. They probably do a lot better than some full timers out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started. I'm pretty new to KW. I guess if you this is still I'm just getting into my second year at KW. I was at 100% brokerage that we all know and love, right, that we always hear about. Um, and I started my team there, and I was fortunate where they came with me, and then since I joined here, added a couple new agents onto our team. So I love our team. We're doing great.
Good.
We have great synergy, and we have no. Uh, I guess you could call it like no drama. I mean, we just like really get along really well.
That's awesome. So okay, so, and you guys are primarily, you were talking about cold calling. So let's go back to that. Who are you guys cold calling?
Yeah, so we use a Red X dialer that I mean Fizbo's expired. So one of the agents on our team, he does a lot of that. And it's a funny story because he came from a place where I was like, Chris, you got to cold call. You got to try cold calling. And he's like, there's no way I'm going to cold call. He said to me, don't make me cold call. I just can't do it. And I was actually doing this couple sessions on cold calling where I would actually have agents listen in on Zoom while I have people on speakerphone. And he's like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So I think at the time I was using Mojo, which is great as well too. And he went on my Mojo, started cold calling, and he actually, I want to say this is about 2 months ago, got a listing from a cold call at 6%, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
6% commission,
Mm-hmm.
closed it. We didn't even put it on the market. We found an investor that it was definitely a flip. So we found an investor that bought it, and that was all from a cold call. And he's going to relist it with that investor in a couple of weeks, and got another referral out of that as well too. So he's like, okay, I'm sold. I'm sold. Now, I mean, does it always happen that way? I mean, no. And then I tell a lot of people too. I tell my team, a cold call. I mean, there's a very small chance that that person over the phone happens to want to sell as well. I mean, it happens, but not very likely. It's really one of those things where the follow-up game has to be really strong when you're cold calling. Like if you have a conversation with someone on a cold call, they've got to go into your CRM. You've got to keep following up with them because they will eventually, whether it's a life event or something happens, they're going to need to make a decision. They're going to need to move, buy or sell, or they can also send you a referral, even if they don't have any intention of buying or selling. You just got to stay on top of mind. So
Yeah.
I think once you have that conversation with a person over on the other line, even if it's not the most productive conversation, I mean, get them into your CRM and check in on them, every now and then, and always come from a place of value. If you come from a place of value, people will talk to you.
Yeah. 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 And it is possible to stay in relationship with strangers. I think that's a big limiting belief that many agents, I had it before. And then I was calling, old expireds and old FISBOs after, getting through my new ones every day. And I specifically remember a guy, his name is Anthony Nguyen, and his house is worth about 500,000, but it was always listed at 900. It was like a make me mover, right? But every so often I'd be like, oh, hey, what's up, Anthony? Like, how you doing? What's going on? Still haven't sold that property, huh? And it's like, you can build a relationship still, even if it's somebody that you totally don't know. So I love that point about that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. I think when you have those wins, right, that's when you start going, okay, like just get yourself that one win. Right. And then they all of a sudden the world is like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. Cause it only takes one. That's the beauty of all of it. I think even open houses, right? It only takes one. And then when you get that, then that's the time to keep striking when the iron is hot.
Yeah, I love that you said it only takes one, because it really does literally take just one buyer to buy that house.
Mhm.
And even when you're holding an open house, one of the first transactions that I did in residential, I think it was the first one that I did when I went to residential, was from an open house that nobody wanted to do because it was in the market for about 3 months. And it was part of the brokers that the listing agent was the owner of the brokers that I was at the time. And he's like, no takers. And here I am, like, I'm like, dude, I want to do an open house. I've never done an open house before at that point. Did
Mhm.
it? And yeah, sure enough, it was pretty dead, except I got a couple that walked in and they ended up buying the house with me. So it only takes one.
Yeah.
And 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 even going back to the cold calling too, what I think not only do the wins give you the confidence, but the scripts and role play definitely will give you the confidence to do it. I think a lot of times we get afraid in our minds that, oh my goodness, I hope they don't pick up. I hope nobody picks up the phone. And you're just doing the calls just to say that you did the calls, and you're like, guys, like if someone picks up, I don't know what I'm going to say. And there's a little bit of uh, there's some nervousness with that.
Yeah.
But I think with the script practice, that makes all the difference. Because when I was selling insurance, we had to do script practice every morning before we hit the phones. I was 18, 19 at the time doing script practice with guys that are my age now, like in their 40s, right? It was very intimidating.
Yeah.
And those guys, they made it very difficult for me, probably just to, break in the young 18-year-old. They made it very, very difficult. But that helped me a ton. And we still do script practice every day. So
Yeah. So
I
how do
think
you
it's
do it with
very
your
valuable.
how do you do it with your team? Talk to us about that.
Oh, so we go through several scripts. A lot of time, I mean, we'll try to go through a certain theme each week. So right now we're going through objection handling. And the biggest objection is, well, the interest rates are too high. Why
Mm,
should I sell? Or, the market's down. Like, you know, the market's going to crash. How we handle those sort of objections. So, yeah, we have several scripts that we go through every weekend. Actually, my team is required. If you want to be on my team, you actually have to lead script practice for the office once a week. So I make them actually lead it, because you learn more when you're teaching it and when you're leading it. It makes it so much easier for it to soak in for you. So I require that from my team too, because that's how much I value script practice.
that's amazing. I've dropped it for my PC clients into our shared drive, but I have some of the recordings from when I was a brand new agent. And I had the same experience. I had all the experienced agents like giving me hell over
Yeah.
this stuff, and I was just like, what? But I hear you. If when I think back to that, there's no way I could have done what I did, with for sale by owners, for example. Had I not had those people grilling me. And I think one of the things I love that what you said about the themes for the week, because you do need to have themes. You need to have some sort of consistency, but with script practice, it's also like commit to themes and commit to people like even the partners, commit to them for a few weeks at a time, and then switch it up, right? Don't commit to it like for forever, the same person, because you start letting each other slip, a little bit. So I love what you said about the themes. I think that's such a great point. Objection handlers, do you guys like, I remember when I would call, I would write whatever objection I heard that I didn't know the answer to, I would just put it on a sticky note, and I had him like in front of me. And then I would go around the office going, what would you say to this? What would you say to this? How do you guys figure that out?
Yeah, so my method on objection handling really comes in two phases. So the first part is in the beginning of the conversation. If you don't have any rapport built with them, you don't really want to handle that objection. You want to pivot away from it. That's just how I always feel. So I teach a thing called ARPing. So ARP, acknowledge, respond, and pivot away. So in the beginning, you don't have any rapport built with them yet. So we tend to naturally try to give our rebuttal. We try to give our argument of, no, actually, you should still buy now because the homes are going to appreciate. We just try to go right through that brick wall.
Mhm.
But really, in the beginning of the conversation, it's about, oh, got it. So you think the interest rates are too high? You acknowledge, yeah, yeah, interest rates have gone up in the last couple of months to fight inflation, and pivot. Well, if you were to move, where would you move to?
Mhm.
Or, well, how long have you been looking? And then now I'm getting them away from that objection. Once I've built rapport with them and it's kind of getting closer to where I want to give my pitch or when I want to go for the appointment, at that point, once I have that rapport built, I can go into more of a closing at the end. So I'll give little tactics like giving an assumptive question. It's like, if someone doesn't want to list with me, they want to interview other agents. At that point, then I can go a little bit more into the objection. Okay, great. Well, based on the commission we talked about, is that something that we're good with? Great. Based on my marketing strategy, is that something that you feel comfortable with? Great. And so now I'm pre-uncovering objections, making
Mhm.
sure that we handle them all in one shot. And then I'll once I get, okay, so if it's just the fact that you want to interview other agents, if I can show you we can get through this, Are you ready to move forward today? Is there anything else stopping you from moving forward today? And then we'll go into more of that.
Mhm.
So I think the way you handle the objections really have to be handled differently depending on where you are with the prospect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And so it's kind of like I know Philip was always talking about like the football field and how when you're first making the first call to somebody that you really don't know, you're not even on the playing field yet. You're like still in the tunnel with them. And then the more you talk to them, you're getting closer and closer to the actual field. And now you can actually like start playing and go into that stuff instead of like going into it right away. Like it doesn't make any sense, right? So I love that ARP. Did you guys all capture that? Any thoughts on that, Philip, for you guys in Calabasas?
I think it's awesome. Like what you're describing is creating relationships. I think a lot of times the role play and scripts practice around cold call is that you're just going to get lucky with someone who's going through a divorce, dealing with death, and they need to sell. Where you're actually finding motivation, addressing the elephant in the room, which is interest rates are high, prices are coming down, and you're digging deep with the report and pivot. By with the pivot, especially just kind of finding out if they were to move, where would they be going to next? And is there a motivation to move forward? So you created literally a reason for lead follow-up. And we all know that you're going to get the appointment with somebody, 8 to 12 calls into the relationship outside of someone being a for sale by owner or an expired, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the mindset too that tends to happen was when agents first get an objection, especially on a cold call, there's a natural objection is like, oh no, we're not interested. And then the agent just gets, oh, okay, well, there's that brick wall. Okay, well, sorry, if you're ever interested, then give me a call. Oh, I'm so, they just feel defeated right away. I try to tell people that's really a reflex resistance. It's kind of like when you go into a retail store and then the worker says, hey, is there anything I can help you with? Your reflexes tell you, oh, no, it's okay, I'm just looking. But you're really not just looking. You are actually wanting some help. You're there to shop for something. You're there to buy something, but your reflexes just kind of give you a little bit of resistance and you say, oh no, I'm just looking, I'm okay. I think a lot of times in my experience, the caller on the other end says, oh no, I'm not interested, I just bought a home. And if you're able to pivot around that, I've had some really deep, great conversations with people, even when after they gave me that first initial objection, just because I practiced how to pivot away from that and to dig deep with more questions. So it really comes down to, I think the first half of a conversation, if it's going to be a 20-minute conversation, at least 10 minutes of that has got to be you asking questions. If you're just asking questions, the right questions, you're going to get a good conversation, because I always share my theory with people, with the agents. There are two things that people love to talk about, and that's themselves and their homes. So, we've gone door knocking before, and, I tell people, I kind of make it a little game. I say, how much do you want to bet that I will have at least one person show me the inside of their home? They'll let me inside their house and they'll walk me through it. How much do you want to bet? And I get it pretty much every time. They're like, newer agents are shocked. They're like, and this was even during COVID with masks on, we're getting invited into homes. People were letting us into their homes because people love to talk about their houses. When you start asking them questions, the right questions about their homes, they're like, well, let me show you. Well, let me show you some of the kitchen renovations that we just did. They're extremely proud of it. And then when you can start asking the right questions, you can start building rapport. Once you've got that rapport, you can pretty much say whatever you want and you can get that appointment.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's like a spy game. That reminds me of Brad Pitt. Do you remember that?
All
In
I
that
heard, Sonia, was you saying that I remind you of Brad Pitt. So I'm just going to walk away with that. That's all I'm going to hear.
Yeah, no, so that's awesome. I love that. You know what? There's something to be said, I think, for that, like kind of gamifying the whole thing, right? Also, like have fun with the prospecting. And one of the things that I'll, you do such a great job at, even just on Facebook. I know you're a productivity coach also, and you take people out with you to go door knocking, and it looks really fun. Like every time I see your stuff, I'm like, I want to go. And I think that's, you have to have fun with it. Otherwise, it's whatever prospecting you're doing, whether you're doing a reverse bold 100 or a bold 100 or going to an event with people or whatever it is, like we got to have fun with it. But I love the idea of gamifying it a little bit.
Oh yeah, we definitely have fun. I think there was a time when we had another agent that was doing an open house, and it was on a Saturday. We're doing a little Saturday school thing, and that agent was on speakerphone and said, and we kind of challenged him. It's like, hey, let's see if he can get this appointment with this couple that just walked in to the open house. He literally put the phone down, left it on speakerphone. We heard pretty much the entire conversation, and he got the appointment. So even when you just have the mindset of, you know what, at the end of this, by the end of this open house, I need to get at least one appointment, or while I'm going door knocking, I need to get invited into the home, or I need to get a contact. I tell people too. I'll bet you 9 times out of 10, I'll get their email and phone number on a cold door knock. I can get it, and sure enough, I get it. And a lot of it too is not because I just look like so non-threatening or whatever it is, but you know, it's just the way that you ask, and the mindset of knowing, yeah, I can get it. And when you just have that mindset, it just shows. Whereas you're like, oh man, I don't know if man, people aren't going to give me their email addresses. That's crazy. I mean, I get it all the time.
Yeah. Okay, so we're almost at the bottom of the hour. We are at the bottom of the hour, but I want to say that one thing you said right now is getting the appointment from the open house. So if anybody here is doing open houses this weekend, moving away from the mindset of just getting their information, but how about we set appointments directly from the open house versus thinking like, I'm going to follow up with them tomorrow and set an appointment. I love that idea. And do you have any last thoughts on that? How do you get an appointment directly from an open house?
I'd say the words that have to be in your vocabulary has to be, which I use to as a transition to get an appointment, is, well, why don't we do this? Well, why don't we do this? You're just taking control. Well, why don't we do this? I mean, I'm going to be here for another half an hour. Are you going to be around, or are you going to go back? You know, why don't we do this? Why don't we get together? Let's talk about this a little bit more. And I make assumptive statements because this sounds like you're interested in exploring this further. It sounds like you guys are really motivated, and it sounds like you guys are in a situation where you really need to talk to an agent. So why don't we do this? And when I use those kind of assumptive statements, they're almost kind of like, oh, well, okay, yeah, sure. And yeah, you're right. I do kind of want to do this.
Yeah.
You know, I get that appointment probably, 9 out of 10 times. So a lot of it's the mindset of I'm going to get the appointment, and practicing those scripts and those statements on getting that appointment scheduled.
Love that. Love it. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this? Are you guys having ahas? Is this helpful?
I love it. Why don't we do this? It's so casual and it moves everything forward.
Yeah.
It does move it forward. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, there are other things like that you can say. What do we call those things? Assumptive clauses, I guess, but they're tie downs, right? Like,
tie downs, yeah.
Let's do the right thing. Let's get together, right? So learning the tie downs, learning the scripts, and just assuming the close and assuming the appointment already versus just being like, oh, why don't you just give me your information?
Another good one is, here's what happens next. After you ask the question, okay, well, great. Well, here's what happens next. We need to get together because this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to do this. And then my statement that I use to try to seal the deal is I list, okay, so we're going to get together. We're going to look for some homes. We'll start this weekend. And I lay out what we're going to do. And I end it with, sound like a plan? And whenever you say it sounds like a plan, 99% of the time, the response is, sounds like a plan. They repeat it. It happens every time. So I just try that even with your friends. Like, hey, this weekend, we're going to go to this restaurant. We're going to hang out. We're going to go to this bar afterwards. Does that sound like a plan? A lot of times, all right, sounds like a plan. Yeah. So when you just close it with sounds like a plan, it just, I would say it just works like a charm. You're already getting them to agree with you.
So awesome. Hey, will you do me a favor and just put your email in the chat box, Richard, for everyone?
Of course.
You guys, you need any help, you want to talk to some master of scripts and dialogues, talk to Richard. And you are out of the Cerritos office? No, where are you at?
Cerritos and La Mirada. Yeah.
Cerritos and La Mirada, guys. So Richard Chung, thank you so much for being our guest today, our Kellebrity.
My pleasure. Anything for you, Sonia.
Appreciate you being here. I want to respect everybody's time. Have a great Friday, everyone. Make it a powerful weekend, and hope that this was useful to you. Okay?
Thank you.
Have a good one, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Happy Friday. Thanks, Richard.